Chapter 1. The Green Silence. The silence of the Amazon was a lie. Maya knew that silence here didn't mean peace. It meant something was hunting, and everything else was holding its breath. Dr. Maya Thorne, a herpetologist specializing in cryptids, stood knee-deep in the brackish water of the Devil's Bowl, a depression in the Peruvian rainforest that locals refused to enter. Her satellite phone had lost signal 3 days ago, and her guide, terrified by localized tremors and shifting mud, had abandoned her at the ridge. She adjusted her glasses, wiping away the condensation. The heat was oppressive, a physical weight that pressed against her lungs, smelling of ozone and rotting vegetation. She wasn't here for a common wildlife. She was tracking a legend of snake said to be the size of a train car, a remnant of a forgotten epoch. She checked her GPS tracker, but the screen was static. "Great," she whispered, her voice sounding too loud in the unnatural quiet. She waded forward, the water thick and oily against her waders. Towering ceiba trees blocked out most of the sunlight, casting the swamp in a perpetual, gloomy twilight. Suddenly, the water ahead of her rippled. It wasn't the erratic splash of a fish or the scuttle of a caiman. It was a displacement wave, a long, smooth surge that traveled against the current. Maya froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. About 50 feet away, a massive log lay half submerged in the muck, covered in moss and algae. She hadn't noticed it before. Then, the log blinked. A vertical slit pupil, black as void and surrounded by iris of sickly gold, opened on the side of the mass. Maya's breath hitched. It wasn't a log. The scale of it defied biology. The head alone was the size of a small sedan. The creature rose slowly, shedding a curtain of swamp water, revealing scales that shimmered with an iridescent, dark green hue. It was an anaconda, but of a size that shouldn't exist, easily 40 feet long, thick as an oil drum. It tasted the air with a tongue the size of a human arm, and it was looking directly at her. Chapter 2. The Displacement. Maya didn't scream. Her training took over, overruling the primal panic screaming in her hindbrain. Don't run. Predators trigger on movement. But the anaconda didn't care about rules. It didn't strike with the blinding speed of a viper. It moved with the terrifying inevitability of a glacier. The water exploded as the massive body surged forward. Maya threw herself backward, scrambling up a muddy bank of mangrove roots. The sound was deafening, a thrashing, churning chaos as the beast closed the distance. She clawed at the mud, her fingernails breaking, boots slipping on the slick clay. She could hear the low, guttural vibration of the snake, a sound felt in the teeth more than heard. "Come on, move!" she screamed at herself. She reached the top of the bank and sprinted into the dense undergrowth. Ferns the size of doors whipped against her face, cutting her skin. She didn't look back, but she could hear it, the heavy, rhythmic slither crash of a ton of muscle-crushing saplings and grinding over roots. It was faster on land than it had any right to be. She vaulted over a fallen tree, her equipment bag snagging on a branch. She wrenched it free, losing precious seconds. The crashing sound behind her stopped. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. Was it gone? Or was it coiling? She pressed her back against the rough bark of a mahogany tree, trying to quiet her ragged breathing. The jungle was still. Too still. Too still. Then, from the canopy above, a single drop of thick, viscous saliva landed on her shoulder. She slowly looked up. Chapter 3. The squeeze draped across the branches like a grotesque garland. The anaconda was descending. It had taken to the trees with disturbing grace for its size. Its head hung just 10 feet above her, swaying slightly, hypnotically. Maya bolted just as the head lunged. The jaws snapped shut inches from her boots with a sound like a bear trap closing. She scrambled down a ravine, sliding uncontrollably through mud and decaying leaves. She hit the bottom hard, rolling into a shallow stream. Pain flared in her ankle, but she forced herself up. Adrenaline was the only thing keeping her moving. She needed higher ground. Snakes like this were ambush predators. They preferred water and low ground. She spotted a limestone cliff face about 100 yards away, riddled with small cave openings. If she could reach the rocks, maybe she could squeeze into a crevice too small for the giant. She limped toward the cliff, every splash in the stream sounding like a death knell. She could hear the beast behind her again, moving through the ravine. It wasn't rushing anymore. It was stalking. It knew she was hurt. It was tasting her fear on the air. As she reached the base of the cliff, she found her path blocked by a thick tangle of vines. She frantically hacked at them with her machete. Snap. Snap. The noise was too loud. She glanced over her shoulder. The grass parted 30 feet away, revealing the massive, muscular coils of the beast. It raised its head, rising higher and higher until it towered over her, blocking out the dim light. It hissed, a sound like a steam valve releasing pressure. Chapter 4. The dead-end Maya squeezed through the vines just as the snake struck, its snout smashing into the rock face with enough force to shake the ground. She scrambled up the rocky incline, her hands bloody and raw. She found a narrow fissure in the rock, barely wide enough for a human, and wedged herself inside. She pushed herself as deep as she could go, into the cool, damp darkness. Outside, the light was fading as evening approached. She waited, shivering, clutching her machete. For a long time, there was nothing. Then, the light at the cave entrance was blotted out. The anaconda's head filled the opening. It pushed, its scales scraping loudly against the stone. The cave trembled. It couldn't fit its body inside, but it could fit its head. The beast opened its mouth, revealing rows of recurved teeth, each the size of a shark's tooth. It hissed into the cave, the smell of rotten meat washing over Maya. It couldn't reach her, not quite. It withdrew slightly, then struck the rock again in frustration. Maya pressed herself against the back wall, tears stinging her eyes. She was trapped. The snake settled outside the entrance, its massive body coiling like a blockade. It was waiting. It had all the time in the world. It knew she would have to come out eventually. Thirst would kill her before the snake did, but the snake seemed content to wait for the Aodeer. Chapter 5. The fire and the escape hours passed. Night had fallen completely. Maya dug through her pack, her hands shaking. She had a flare gun, a small medical kit, and a bottle of high-proof rubbing alcohol. A desperate plan formed in her mind. The snake was still there. She could hear its slow, rhythmic breathing. It was likely entering a torpid state for the night, conserving energy. This was her only chance. She took off her outer shirt and soaked it in the alcohol. She wrapped the cloth around the end of her machete, creating a makeshift torch. Then, she loaded a flare into the gun. "Time to wake up," she whispered. She crawled toward the entrance. The snake shifted, sensing her movement. Its eyes opened, glowing in the darkness. As it opened its mouth to strike, Maya lit the torch with her lighter. The sudden burst of flame in the confined space startled the beast. It recoiled, hissing violently. Maya didn't hesitate. She lunged forward and thrust the burning torch toward the snake's sensitive heat pits and eyes. The beast roared a sound that shouldn't come from a reptile and thrashed backward, uncoiling from the entrance. Maya scrambled out of the fissure. The snake was blinded momentarily, thrashing in the brush, setting dry leaves on fire, but it recovered quickly, turning toward her heat signature. Maya raised the flare gun and aimed not at the snake, but at the dry moss-covered tree directly above it. Bang! The flare embedded in the dry wood, and within seconds, the oil-rich tree caught fire. The flames roared up, creating a wall of heat and light. The anaconda, terrified of the intense heat which confused its sensory organs, retreated into the swamp water, disappearing beneath the black surface. Maya didn't watch it go. She turned and ran, navigating by the light of the fire, heading toward the ridge where she had been dropped off. She didn't stop until she saw the lights of the distant village. She had survived the domain of the serpent, but she knew, as she looked back at the smoking jungle, that the monster was still there, waiting in the green silence.